Okay, so the last transformation that we're going to talk about is going to be rotations. We've talked about the other ones. Rotations are the same size. And they are the same shape. Therefore, we know they are congruent. Okay, but with the rotation, they obviously have a different orientation because we're moving them around. And when we're looking at rotations, one thing I want you to remember is that 90 degrees means you move one time. 180 degrees means you're going to move two times. And 270 degrees means you're going to move three times. Now for 360 degrees, that means you're going all the way around, so you're just going to stay put. You're going to stay right there where you're at. Okay? We know clockwise and counterclockwise, but if we don't, here are the way they move. And it says a rotation is a transformation that turns a figure around a given, and the word you want here is point. Let's see if I can spell that right. Given point, called the center of rotation. Okay, if you look at this, I'm going to tell you a few things, and then we're going to go through them. Your original figure starts here. So if you're moving 90 degrees clockwise, you're going to be here. 180 would be here. 270 would be here because we're going clockwise. If you're going counterclockwise from here, 90 would be here. 180 is in the same place because we're moving two times no matter what. And then 270 would be here. So keep that in mind. When you are looking at a 90 degrees rotation, clockwise, you are looking at your Y and your X changing for your algebraic rotation representation. So your Y is going to move to the front and it's going to stay the same sign, but your X is going to move to the back and it's going to change signs. So we'll talk about that in a minute. I just want to put these in your notes so that when you go back you can see this. If you're moving counterclockwise 90 degrees, it's going to be a little bit opposite. They're still going to change, they're still going to flip, but your Y is going to be the one that is going to change signs and your X is going to stay the same. For 180 degrees, it is always negative X, negative Y, which means both of them stay in the same place, but they change signs. And we're going to work on this as we do this. Okay? If I look here, the very first thing that I always want to do on a rotation is I want to label my quadrants. So I have quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Okay, this is important because the way I'm going to show you how to do these rotations, you're going to have to know which quadrant you're in. If I look at this figure, PQR, it is in quadrant 2, so I'm going to circle quadrant 2 because that's where I am. I'm also going to go and I'm going to label those points. I'm going to find my ordered pair, P, Q, R. If I look at this, my P is sitting back here at negative 7, and it's going to go up 7. My Q is sitting at negative 3, up 7. I got that by going back 3 and up 7. And my R is sitting at negative 3, 3. And I got that by moving back 3 and going up 3. Okay, now we're going to rotate. And it tells us to graph the image of the triangle after a clockwise rotation of 90 degrees. So clockwise, we're going this way. And we're going 90 degrees, which means we're moving one time. So if we're here and we're going this way and we're moving one time, that is going to put us in quadrant 1. I'm going to put a star beside quadrant 1 because that's where I want to go. Okay, the way I teach this is now I want quadrant 1 to be where this old figure was, and it's in quadrant 2. So I'm going to rotate my paper, and then I'm going to plot these points again. Now, you're going to have to ignore any numbers that are here because we've kind of changed the dynamic a little bit. P was sitting at negative 7, 7. So we're going to start at our origin, and we're going to count back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we are going to put a P prime right here. Okay? Our Q was sitting at negative 3, 7. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we're going to put a Q prime right here. And then our R was sitting at negative 3, 3. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, up 1, 2, 3. And we're going to put R prime here. And then we're just going to connect the dots. Okay? Now we've rotated it, so we need to move our paper back to the original position. And if you've labeled your quadrants, you'll be able to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So now we've rotated the figure, and we're just going to plot the ordered pair again. I'm going to put it under here because I want you to be able to see what happens. P prime, which is right here, is now going to be sitting at 7, 7. Q prime is going to be sitting at 7, 3. And R prime is going to be sitting at 3, 3. It's hard to see because we didn't have much room to write on this one. We'll do a couple more that will have a little bit more room. These are hard to look at because the numbers, even though that's a negative, we still have all 7s and all 3s. So I'm going to look at this one right here for my algebraic representation. And you know we always start out with the XY, and we have an arrow. And then we need to figure out what these are doing. We're going to have them in here. We're going to figure out what they're doing. Okay, if you look at this, my X moved to the back. And it also changed signs because that's a negative and that's a positive. So my X is now going to change signs and move to the back. My Y moved to the front, but it didn't change signs. So I'm just going to put a Y here, which is how we got this up here, the Y negative X. We just looked at it and we figured out what happened with it, and that became our algebraic representation. Okay, let's look at another one real quick. Okay, this one says, graph the triangle ABC with vertices negative 4, 1, negative 2, 1, negative 1, negative 2 on the coordinates. So we're going to do that first. Actually, we're going to go ahead and label our quadrants because that's the first thing we do every time. Okay, we got those quadrants labeled. Now, we're going to take A, and we're going to go back negative 4, and we're going to go up 1. And we're going to label that A. It's not A prime because it's just A. We're doing our original figure. B is sitting at negative 2, 1, so we're going to go here. We're going to make that a B. And then C is sitting at negative 1, negative 2. Be careful which way you go. Don't go up. And we're going to make that a C. Then we're just going to connect our dots. Okay, that's our original figure. So we're going to go down here and we're going to write these points. They gave them to us, so it's not going to be too hard to write. A was negative 4, 1. And B was negative 2, 1. And C was negative 1, negative 2. Okay? Now we need to rotate. And it tells us that we need to graph it ABC after a 180 degrees clockwise rotation. So clockwise goes this way. And we're going to go 180 degrees, which is 2 times. But we have to figure out which quadrant we're going to use because I have stuff in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. I'm just going to go ahead and use quadrant 2, and I'm going to circle it. And then I'm going to move 2 times to the right, 1, 2, which puts me down here in quadrant 4. Okay, I need quadrant 4 to be sitting right here in quadrant 2. So I'm going to rotate my paper. until quadrant 4 is up there in quadrant 2. Then I'm going to redo those points. Ignore these numbers because they're not correct anymore. Okay, A was sitting at -4, 1. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, up 1. And we're going to do A prime. B was sitting at -2, 1. 1, 2, up 1. That's B prime. And C was sitting at 1, -2, which is here. That's C prime. Connect your dots. Okay? In order to get the ordered pairs, we've got to turn it back around to the original spot. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And then we're just going to plot those points again. Okay, A prime. A prime is going to be 4, -1. B prime is going to be 2, -1. And C prime up here is going to be 1, 2. Okay? So let's look at what happened to these. X, Y. Let's see how they changed. My X stayed in the same place, but it changed signs. So I'm going to say -X. My Y stayed in the same place, but it changed signs. So we're going to put -Y. That means they changed signs. Okay? Let's look at this over here. This one doesn't give us a graph. It just tells us that we're going to change these and we're going to find the new points. We're just going to use the rule to do it. So the rule here says that if you are going 90 degrees clockwise, the rule is, we're just going to write it here, X, Y, Y, -X. And that is correct. This one down here is not correct, but this one is. Okay, so let's just do A prime. If I'm switching places with my Y is going to go in the front, which is 2. But my X not only has to switch, it has to change signs. So I'm at 4. My B prime, my Y is now going to be in the front, but it doesn't change signs. My X is going to change signs and move to the back. So I'm now at 3. C prime, same thing. Y does not change signs, but it moves to the front. My X changes signs and moves to the back, so it's a -2. And with D prime, you can't do anything with 0, especially 2 zeros. We could switch the way they were if both of them weren't a 0, but since they are, they're just going to remain 0, 0. Okay, earlier we did a counterclockwise, and this one says that we're going to rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. It tells us that our rule is Y, -X, and that is not true. Our rule is X, Y. We saw this earlier, -Y, X. So the Y changes signs and the X stays the same, but they switch places. So J, up here it tells us is sitting at -2, -4. And it tells us K is at 1, 5. And it tells us L is at 2, 2. So we're going to do the same thing we did earlier. We're just going to see what our J prime is. If they're switching places and the Y is changing signs, this -4 is going to change to a 4 and move to the front. This -2 is just going to move to the back because X is not changing signs. K prime, 5 is going to change signs and move to the front, so we're going to make it a -5. The 1 is going to move to the back but stay the same sign. L prime, this 2 is going to move to the front and change to a -2, and this 2 is just going to move to the back because X does not change signs. Okay, I know that's a lot. You can go back and review the video. If you have any questions, please come see me during tutoring.